Welcome to Re-Envision, the podcast where we embrace change as one of life's most profound rhythms. I'm your host, Bédard, and change is my playground. Curiosity is the signature vibe. Joy, love, magic, and freedom are the frequencies I move with. Courage is the embodied state, and duality is my jam. I love to reveal light and darkness, permanence and impermanence, equanimity and chaos, oneness and distinctiveness. Here we have full permission to be ourselves, to explore, to dream, to discover. We'll tap into the wisdom that has always been within as we navigate change with simplicity, lightness, and fluidity. Open to new understandings, new perspectives, and even greater potentialities. So whether you're seeking inspiration, empowerment, or simply a space to reflect and contemplate, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome back to this episode of the Revision Podcast. I am so grounded and grateful for the journey that brought me here to this moment, embracing everything that has happened to me over my lifetime, and really haven't taken the time to draw not only meaning, but also purpose. Deep connected purpose within myself. Hi, if you're just hopping in the Revision Podcast for the first time, welcome. If you're a listener, if you've listened to the previous episodes, previous seasons, welcome back. Today, I actually am going to share something that is even deeper and even more personal and even more vulnerable than anything that I've shared on this podcast so far. And it's really because I am stepping into the magic, into the medicine, into the purpose for which my soul came into this life, the purpose that I have known since I'm a child that I was meant for. But for a whole slew of different circumstances, it wasn't until a few years ago that I really understood what was going on within. Now, to give you a little bit in context, I'm a only child. I came into this world as a surprise. I don't know if I've talked about this in the previous podcast episode, but I was an accident. I came into this life. My parents, they were not planning on having children. My father thought that this world was way too cruel to bring children willingly into this life. And while my mother, wanted children, I think that it might have been something that it wasn't in her mind, short-term not possible. I don't know. I cannot speak for her as to how she felt about the whole thing, but I'll just say that I came in as an accident. And when I came into this world, I came in through a very trauma-triggering matter, in a sense that, like today, we know the sex of the gender of the child. But when I came into this world, I don't know what my mom was thinking in her mind. But when she realized that I was a woman, that I was a girl, she really reacted very badly because of all the trauma related to that generational wounding that we have as women, and also for lived experience in her own life. And I really think that she understood along the way with the questions that I was asking about life and death. So I was raised a Pentecostal evangelist, more specifically evangelist church. I was also going to church I had my best friend when I was a child was Asian, and we were going to her church. Sometimes I was accompanying in her family to the church was a Baptist church with all the singing and all the glory of, those gospel, very joyful, celebrating life moments in the week where everybody was getting together in a celebration place. And I've always felt very connected to celebration, temples, church. I think it was something that was transmitted from my mom. My mom, when I was going on trips with her and we were visiting like villages or cities or towns, she always wanted to stop at every church. And she kind of basked into that vastness out that reflected something within her, something that she might have not fully understood in a logical way. And that might be something that I don't think that when I was asking questions and I was going into more of a trying to understand and align whatever I was witnessing in the outside world or what was conveyed to me like in verbal with what I felt within my body. And when I'm talking about this 4 or 5 years old, when I was waking up in the middle of the night and I was telling my mom that at the end of my life, I didn't want to live forever in a place with everybody else and called paradise. And she was trying to explain some stuff to me, but it just didn't resonate with me within. And I always kept that side of me, that spiritual side of me, very quiet, even if, even after my parents stopped to go to church when I was around 19 years old, I still wanted to go to church. So what I was doing is I was overnighting at my grandparents' place and I was going to church with them. And I did that like way until early in my teens when I got to high school. And then it was more difficult for me to overnight over the weekends at my grandparents' house. But I have had a very unique experience with God and with the beyond since I was a child. I've been very much connected to something that was not in the 3D, that was, beyond what everybody else seemed to be experiencing in what I was witnessing and also in the way that they were conveying and answering my questions. And I kind of got disconnected with that willingly because I was trying to tone it down, unconsciously because I don't think that I was ready to deal with whatever was going on and the calling that I had with that. And I remember since as long as I can remember, I was always afraid of death, like the meaning of death, what was going on, what was happening afterwards. And as human beings, we all have this. But for me, it was like there was a physical reaction to it every single time that I was thinking about having to think about how the universe is, on a scientific way, organized. It really, really was triggering something within me that was familiar and unfamiliar at the same time. And when my mother passed away, what happened is it left an immense void inside of my being. Her departure not only affected me like in the everyday life, but it truly, truly created a void, an endless, bottomless pit. I was calling it at some point my black hole, or everything that was, approaching it was kind of like getting disintegrated and getting into a world of some sort. And as my grieving process kind of like unfolded, it dawned on me that there was a key in that void, that in understanding that void, and also how to, move within the grief, not only with exterior conditions, but also within myself with interior conditions. And since as a biologist, I know that nature doesn't like void, it tends to fill. So that's why we always have like nature taking over. When there's something that is plain, there's always this regenerative cycle, right? And I was like, okay, this is going to happen in any way, shape, or form. How do I want this to be unfolding? What is my intention with that inner castle, inner temple? Because it was starting to dawn on me that it was really a castle or a temple that I was carrying within my interior, within temple. And that was connecting me to something bigger, including my mother, including a greater, higher self, or the source or God, or whatever you call, whatever you name, whatever the words that you're using for that bigger than self entity that is omnipresent, omnipotent. So as I was evolving in this, I decided that I was going to treat it like an altar, like somewhere in a cross between an altar and a garden, where I was going to create, like at the center, it was going to be that love, that never ending, never dying love that subsists through time, through generation, through our life, no matter what was happening. That was going to be at the center of it. And of course, the figure that I have about that love, even if my coming into this world was very traumatically triggering for my mother, she actually so evolved and learned how to develop a wonderful relationship with me, despite the relationship that she's had with other women, despite the relationship that she's had with her own mother, despite the relationship, like what we call usually the motherhood wound or the sisterhood wound. I know that she really intentionally developed something that was different with me. And I know that part of her healing, she told me some very intimate things at some point, and I know that a very great part of her healing on that journey was that, and she intentionally chose to make it so, which was a beautiful conversation that I've had among many other conversations that I've had with her, as you can remember from the first episode of this season. And so I started to kind of like create like this altar within me that was in the middle of that temple or that inner castle. And I started to tend to that garden, intentionally tending to the garden, but without controlling what was going on. So in Canada, we had a house and we had a big yard, and we had built a garden with different like wood backs that I was planting things in, but also I was like, over the 5 years that we've had it, I was leaving some of the plants to grow and to flower for the bees. And like, I was really working with the cycle of life, with that regeneration of life, with that giving back. And as it was turned, as the insects were pollinizing the flowers, it was bearing fruit. So it was kind of a running gag, because the only way that first of all, I can grow coriander is if I do that. I cannot like grow coriander from seed and just like have it. It's a really organic way that I've learned how to move with nature. Same thing for the mustard, for example. And it was interesting because we had like those bags were like in the part of our yard, but we also had like grass, and we didn't plant the grass. The grass was already there. We didn't remove it either. Our grass with the years became more and more like the outside garden, like the abundance that was overflowing. And sometimes I was going in the garden and I was, picking out in the grass like salads and mustards and all like coriander and all kinds of different plants, edible plants. And I've even started to learn about, like over the years, to learn about the edible wildflowers and the edible plants that were in my garden. And it became kind of a joke as well, where sometimes I was making a salad for lunch and I was telling my husband, well, I'm just going to go weed the garden for lunch, meaning that a lot of what we so-called weeds in our garden are actually edible. They're beneficial. And to learn kind of like what to keep and how to intentionally kind of manage within the cycle of life, we reap a lot more benefits than going like very controlling against the grain. And this is what, at greater scale, this is what is happening, that is so much in disbalance with the way that we have with nature. And that's why so much of my work is really embracing change as life's most profound rhythm, but also connecting back to the earth and within ourselves and within each other, and really observing those cycles that are in all the different sizes, from the atom to the galaxies, to the universe, to like everything that is moving in such a beautiful way and in such a like a mirror way. So I started to do that within myself. And this is why I always say I didn't start this growth, evolution, personal development journey because I wanted to be a better person, because I wanted to be XYZ. I started the journey because I was honoring how much it is beautiful that within the immense pain that I was experiencing, if I wasn't resisting that pain, I was not only not creating more suffering, I was also creating a place where things could grow and things could nourish and things could nurture and feed me. And in the first episode of this season, I talk about the light within, and in all the different times in my life where I have been down in the barrel myself, or I've, observed and witnessed and held space for others that were in the darkness. What happens in the darkness is there's no more noise. What happens in the darkness is there's no more distractions. What happens in the darkness is we finally see that the vulnerable sides of us are linked to that inner light. The uniqueness of ourselves is linked to our light. And because we are at the, in the darkest times, and we kind of like go into a survival mode, we don't really care about what others are going to think, because our goal is just to get out of there, right? That is where the duality is, at this crispiness, at this sharpness, where we really feel like all the colors and the textures and the asperities of everything that comprises us in our uniqueness, but also us as human, and what connects ourselves to this bigger oneness, to this wholeness. And as we pick up the light to walk through the desert or to walk through the tunnel, and as we pick up this light and we're just like moving through the pain, not resisting it, walking with our fear, with any amount of support, external or not, we really, really, really strengthen our abilities, and we really build our courage and our resilience through that. And yes, sometimes along the way we pick up trauma, and because we kind of like move along, but these trauma, if we can avoid creating them, we can revisit in so many different ways, other than like, 'cause sometimes people are saying like, no, I don't want to go to therapy, and I'm not a therapist, but I actually really acknowledge the help that I've had with therapists, going back and having support in that way. And it came a time where I needed another type of support, but it was always to support the journey that was going on within myself. It was always with intentionality to leverage these exterior tools to support and kind of bridge the journey that I was going through. And in grief, it's such a particular darkness because nobody talks about it. Our societies are not only disconnected with the natural rhythms, the ebbs and flow, the cycles of regeneration, the life and death, like we're having our minds that are so much in the logical way. We're practicing a very linear, timeline. But in reality, it's not. In reality, we have grief. We're mourning things on a daily basis. And when we start to like acknowledge how much strength and resilience and courage we've built with these other areas, when the big life changing, life altering things are happening, we really have more clarity as to, oh my God, like I can do this and I can get through this. And even if I don't see the end of the tunnel or the light at the end of the tunnel, I know that it's there because I've been somewhere in some sort of way within that journey. Not exactly the one, but I can draw some parallels. And I'm going to give you a very, very good example of this. When my ex-husband and I split it up, I went back to live at my parents' place. And, after 5 years of marriage, we had been 8 years together. Like it was a very big grief. So there's like it's like the 3DM. There's 4 big events in our life that are like really big change. So 3 days you have death, you have divorce or unwanted separation or whatever you want to call it. There is disease. So going through disease, accompanying somebody or having a diagnosis yourself. And the last one is move. So moving, like whether you're moving like within your city or across town or between cities or between continents, moving is also a big life change. And all of these 4 have to do with the roots. They all have to do with altering the roots that we have established. In the normal way, the way that we're brought up, our roots are actually externally linked to other people, to, all the thoughts and beliefs, to our environment. So when there's a change in that, our roots they're very disturbed, and it has an impact all the way through our bodies, all the way to all the layers of our being. But when you're grounding yourself within, when your roots are within, when your roots, the bulk of your roots is actually within yourself, then navigating change becomes a lot more easy, and it becomes a lot more light and fluid. And you can really bring yourself back to whatever is simple. When we moved from Canada to here, we decided that if we're going to do this, it was going to be, there was 2 words that we were talking to you, and it was simple and light, simple and light. And every decision that we were taking, we're like, okay, what are the options that we can think of? Which one is the one that is the simplest and the lightest? Now, that being said, the simplest and the lightest and the more fluid is not necessarily the easiest one. When you have a infinite mindset instead of a finite mindset, when you see the big picture, the simplest, more fluid, more light decision is not always the easiest one. That's why having a finite mindset kind of like bypasses, because we're going for the path of least resistance. Our brain is built like this. So that's why we have to cultivate the bigger picture vision to keep us in line. So as I was evolving and as I was growing, I was really tending to that inner castle within, that temple. And I'm saying this, and it's really all organic, because I am really like, my goal was to really be connected what was going on within my body. And the interesting part of what happened was that as I was tending to the inside one, I was really connecting further to my roots and really connecting further to what was going on, that I could really feel when in my body the energy was not flowing well. And I could really, like when I was in situation where I could feel it, I was reacting to something, or that I was repeating a pattern, I could really build more space around that to switch my reaction into a response. I'm going to go back to my story. So I moved back to my parents' place, and I spent a lot of time in my room. And one day my mom walked into my room and she said, I'm worried because you've been in your room a lot. And I told her, I said, I know that you're worried, and I welcome the love that you're showing me. I'm going to just answer to you that even if I know I'm in a big dark tunnel and I cannot see the light in it yet, I know there is a light there. Your first heartbreak is the hardest because you've never been through that road, right? Like those first heartbreak, those first times where you're mourning a loss, where you're grieving, when you're embracing change, even if you don't want to embrace change, you don't know that you've navigated this path. But as you cultivate your courage and your resilience through the lived experience and you draw parallels, that's when you realize that it's much easier to have faith that even if you don't see the light at the end of the tunnel, that it's there, and that you're going to give time, and you're going to move in a way that is in line with how you feel from second to second or from minute to minute, and not trying to fix anything. We go into fixing a lot of things when we feel disempowered. What I always say to people, like, why, like, are you trying to fix something? Are you going into fixing energy, trying to change whatever is going on? So as I was tending to my garden and as I was growing my life and moving forward, not moving on, because that's the other thing, right? A lot of people think that when we're going through grief, we're moving on, and a lot of people don't want, they're resisting that, because moving on we're moving on away from that loved person. We don't want to do that. We want to keep them alive. We want to honor the life that we had. But there's a way to do that by moving forward, that by taking them along with us. And that's what I did with my inner castle and my inner temple, which allowed me to not necessarily, so when we go into grief, we want it to go away as fast as we can. And that's for any, like, whether you've lost a person, but like any pain that we have, we want it to go away. Like we're resisting feeling the feels and going through the process and doing the work and walking the walk, because we want to get rid of it. We want to diminish it. And that always creates, when we're doing that, the resistance, that always creates more suffering. inevitably. And in the end, we're actually we have to deal with it. So we create a whole bunch of suffering around it for nothing. But when we realize that as we go through our grief, as we embrace that pain, as we breathe through the process and through the pain, we can actually tap into other emotions in our body, because we're not shutting down, right? We're not creating different compartments within ourselves. We can tap into other parts, other emotions like joy, emotions like pleasure, that can help us counterbalance and grow the life around the grief, around the loss. So in the end, when you're looking back to all of that, it's not because the grief, the loss, the pain is smaller. I don't believe that it gets smaller. I don't. I believe that we grow the life so much around it that in comparison, it doesn't look as big. And within that duality, within welcoming the pain and welcoming the joy and celebrating the life and mourning the loss, we can really accomplish a harmony within our being, within our lives, and really move into those natural life cycles of nature, of the earth, of what it means to be human, connecting with something that is bigger than us. And all of that brought me to, just before I left Canada, I think the last bit to bring me to that level was to go to that big change, that big grief, that complete knocking off everything that I've ever known to be true, to really revisit all those layers, to revisit all those layers, to build myself back up from scratch. Because I'm telling you, I have built myself back up from scratch. As much as the loss of my mom was a life-turning event, moving to another continent in a foreign country, in a foreign language, and relying only on myself and the very small handful of resources being the coaches, the mentors that I went to support me, all the resources that I already had within, leveraging that knowledge, that wisdom, and the people close to me, what I call my console, was really to bring me to my life's purpose. I have always dwelled between the life and the death, at the bridge of it, at the frontier of it. Everything about my life is about frontiers. Everything about my life is about exploring further and further and helping people, guiding people from one place to the other that I've been. And as I'm moving into this new part of myself and this new part of my journey as a mentor, I am thinking about all these wonderful people that help mothers and children come into this world, whether they're doulas or midwives or doctors or nurses. And we're really, really rarely talking about the ones that help the ones at the end of their life, when they have all their consciences, when they're at the end of the road to go into the other side, whatever you believe that side is, in alignment. This is where I'm standing right now. And I am so blessed to have had all these experiences and all these opportunities to really ground myself within, so I can be of service for the end of life. So as I am stepping into this part of me, this purpose of my soul, I actually created Living Fully, which is going to be an event at the beginning of May, where I am going to be offering a space where people submit questions and I collect all the questions and I answer the questions in a coaching setting way. So whether you're available to be live with me or not, you'll also get the recording. I will take all the questions and I will answer you within that mindset. So if you have a place in your process that you feel stuck, if you have a question on how I see or what's my perspective on something, in order to shift your lens, to reframe, so you can really get that moving forward, honoring your loss, really building that balance between the life that you're creating and all the nice memories that you have. How do we celebrate that? How do we live fully by claiming, like through claiming our grief, claiming the grief, building our courage, living fully. So I really invite you to the show notes links, but you can also find it on my website and in my links in the bios of my social media on Facebook and on Instagram. You can access the link and it will bring you to a form where you can actually submit your question. And when you submit that, you're going to receive an email with the information for the Living Fully. And you will also receive my self-compassion break meditation, which is about 12 minutes. So you can really get into giving yourself some love and giving yourself some compassion and a space for you to really connect and cultivate your own temple, your own inner garden, your own castle within. And also, there's no taboo. You can really ask away the questions that are burning in you, that you're thinking that you want more clarity, that you want perspective, that you want to switch the energy around so, you can move forward. You can also ask questions if it's not you, but you're trying to empower yourself to empower another person that is going into grief, that is going into a process. So that too is something that you could ask questions for, and I'm going to be gladly answering them at the Living Fully event. I love you. I feel you. I see you. Take care. Thank you for being part of today's Re-Envision episode. As the seasons of life shift, I invite you to always connect with the truth that you hold the power to navigate your own path with courage and wisdom. Embracing change with an open heart is central, for within lies the potential for remarkable growth and evolution. If you know someone who would benefit from this conversation, I'd be honored, truly honored, if you shared it with them and spread the love. If this podcast has resonated with you, please subscribe on your favorite platform, leave a heartfelt review, and share it in your network. You can stay connected with me on social media at ME Lifestyle Design, where I continue to share insights and inspiration. Until our next encounter, remember to re-envision your life with love, alignment, and purpose. Keep cultivating your curiosity, finding joy, magic, and freedom as often as you can. Now, today, and tomorrow. I love you. I see you. I feel you.